Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our first annual New Mexico DELT Virtual Conference. This is our beginning PLATO session. And before we get started with the session, I would like to first off make sure that everybody signs in. So if you will please go to the link that is on my screen right now and sign in to the beginning PLATO session. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And please know that if you've signed in before, it's the same URL. You're just signing into a different session. Okay, and with me today is Leslie Holland from Adventum. She will be our presenter today talking about beginning PLATO. So I'm going to mute myself, and Leslie, you are welcome to get started.
All right, thank you very much, and so glad that I could join you all today. I am logged into your account, so we're going to try to use as many scenarios that are familiar to you as possible. But as you're learning a bit about PLATO, we wanted to focus just on a couple things today. We know that you have a lot of great resources in addition to what we're going to cover today. So we're going to look a bit at classes and courses and the contents therein, and maybe a little bit also of flex assignments if we get a chance. We're going to keep a close eye on the time, so if there's things that we don't get to today, don't worry. You do have a lot of support through your implementation coach, David. So this is maybe a similar view to what you see when you log in, even though this is for all of the programs. I'm going to choose one as an example because most times when we log in, we're just seeing our site. So I'm just picking one of the sites. You will probably just see your own. And we're going to just use courseware as the focus. Though many of your sites also use assessments, just in the interest of time, we're going to focus on courseware. When you go to courseware, this is sort of your main hub as a screen. And under courses, you're going to have a couple different choices. And I just want to review each of them a little bit just so you know sort of how you're navigating. The reason we would go to courses and the materials under this header versus learners is that you have to have something set up in advance, and then you worry about sort of linking the right learners to the right pieces. So you want the kind of the infrastructure there in place initially before we start worrying about what learners will wear. Makes sense? And then of course reports would be our last stage, right? The learners have gone in and they've done some things. Now I want to see what they have accomplished. So we have a couple things that you may find helpful. The first is you have course catalog and my classes. A lot of people get confused. Okay, this is a course, this is a class. What does that mean? And I'm confused already. So the course catalog is the overall list of courses that are running within your program. So when you log in, you may see things that really don't jump out at you as being relevant, or there's a sort of a big long list here. What I like about the course catalog is that it does give you visibility to the bigger picture, but it also lets you filter to see what is actually happening within your programming. So for example, I was able to check and uncheck, so I can filter to see what classes may have students, what things may be inactive, I mean, whatever way you want to designate the filter. But if you're logging in and you have access to the course catalog as a program administrator, if that's within your role, then you will be able to see sort of what everybody has set up already. Okay, so this is all when I go in my courseware for my location, and then under courses to the first one, which is the course catalog. So that's everybody's courses within your program. If I want to see more about a course, either that I'm attached to or that I'm supporting, what I would do is I click the little arrow to the left, and it shows me the particular class or section. So you want to think about the course name that you're seeing here is really like the common, I always think of the word book that you're using, right? We're using this text hypothetically. But these are the different ways that we're using it. In this case, there's just one called Prep GED. but there may be other variations on that where there's multiple sections. Okay, so we could have section 1, in the morning, section 2 in the PM, something like that. So there may be multiples under there. The class itself is actually where you have the oversight. So this is the material, and this is the particular class or group of learners that we're working with. And that's why we see the enrollment count sitting over here, right? So if I had multiple sections, I could say, well, there's 10 in this group and 10 in that group and 5 in that group. So that'll give you a sense of, do I have the correct numbers enrolled? Okay. All right. So I just went to the course catalog. We use the filters. That's kind of saying what everybody's doing. If you want to see the things that are you're particularly attached to, then those would be my classes. If I don't have any classes, that may mean two things. The first is I haven't made any classes yet, or the classes that I have set up don't list me as an instructor. So sometimes if you're coming here and you think you have something set up correctly and you're confused, why am I not seeing anything here? Make sure in the course catalog that you're listed as one of the instructors. So it's just something to always check and make sure, because sometimes when you set something up, you don't include yourself as an instructor. So sometimes if you're not listed here, right, I'm not Eva, I'm not going to see this as one of my classes. So right now I don't have anything to show there, but that would be where you see the things that you're associated with. So let's say I wanted to make a new section. I always try to use the word section because it makes a little bit more sense with one of these existing curriculum collections. So what do I do? Well, I got to find it first. And so again, you can either use the filters or also a search term. So for example, if I put in GED, right, and I click the little arrow to move forward, it's going to show me the existing courses that have that, or I can also see all of them because I also chose the courses with no classes. So right now, the reading through language arts doesn't have one. So for example, what would I do if I was going to make up this particular course? I would expand that particular one. I can see that there's no classes that are connected with it. And I'm going to slide all the way over to the right to see something that's a plus sign. And by the way, just the big thing within this solution is if you're not sure what it does, hover over it. It may help you out, right? So here it has a little bubble that says, hey, this is what we're going to do to create a new class within this course. Or if I go over one more, it's like, oh, this is where we're going to go to reports. There's also help up here at the top under Show Me. So if you get really confused or you may want to see a video about how to do things related to this particular section, you can click that. But definitely start out with the hover over it. So if I want to build add a course from scratch, click the little plus sign, and we're going to give it a name. I'm sure there are some naming conventions that have been recommended, so we want to kind of keep that clear because just calling it GED RLA may not be helpful to anybody looking from the outside. So definitely make sure that is articulated clearly for anyone to see. You have your start date, which is set today, though you can, of course, modify that. You also have the ability, if you're a program administrator or an account administrator, to add instructor. And this is where you have to be very attentive if you are in as a program instructor to add yourself. So that's always so that you see that in turn in the My Classes. So if I don't have myself there, it's going to be confusing when you go to My Classes. So you can also search through the list if you'd like. And you can have as many instructors associated with the class. If you have multiple instructors associated with a class, then they will all see this class under My Classes. All right. So if that was all that we needed to do, if I at first have this course, then I now have to think about the learners, right? This means that I didn't really make any curriculum changes to the content. I'm not making any modifications. I just want to get a course started for this content. But if I want to do a little bit more steps, which includes enrollment, because I know that was a question that came up, I'm going to use a class that we have already to do that, because I don't want to make any classes that would be confusing, that you're like, why does this class exist? Oh yeah, Leslie created it when we were doing our conference. So here's one that we have already, right? And this is how it would look, but of course, if it was blank, we have 0 enrollment. And if I want to enroll learners in that particular class, we would select the bubble by the class, and we would go up to actions. This is your friendly action button up here. And this is where we would enroll learners. Okay. That will show us all of the learners that we have to work with. And I know there's a lot of learners to look through. So what you would be able to do is you can also use the search term here. So helpful thing here as well is if you've got a lot of learners and you're like, oh, this would be so tedious. I've got 10 learners to enroll here. I have to keep looking up and coming back to the screen. No, you don't have to do that. So you can start typing in, let's say I'm going to look for all the learners that have this particular designation. So I could click by these 2 learners, right? And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to pick, let's say, all those that have the 2 with them, okay? Right? I didn't do anything else. I'm just choosing the individuals. I'm going to go, before I leave this page, to show me all of my learners and enroll those selected learners. There's this little screen here, and it brings me back to where I started. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our class. I'm going to show you the result here, right? So now I have my 12 students that are part of this class. I'm going to edit by going to the class summary. Okay, so I've got 12. I don't want to have those 12 students in there. I want to change that. I made a mistake. I added someone that I didn't want to. Then you sit here and freeze and go, well, does that mean I go to learners? Nope, I don't need to go to learners. I need to change what's happening with this class. So notice that this class has an icon, which is this magnifying glass. So when we made the new class before and we clicked the plus sign, that wasn't there yet, right? That doesn't have the magnifying glass. So you want to pay attention to the magnifying glass because that lets you go into the class that you've made and make modifications to that class, right? So I want to take out those 2 learners that I really didn't mean to put in there. All right, so here's my learners. I'm going to take out the learners. So again, remember, handy dandy action button. I'm going to withdraw those learners. Right? I don't really want them associated with that class. So that's the first thing that I can do. The second thing that I can do is I can also look at the curriculum that's been set up for this class. And because this is not a customized course, it kind of looks out of the box original, right? The units 1 and then 2, then 3, and then 4. So even though I may not want to really modify this course a great deal, sometimes when we offer courses, this is a lot for students to see all at once. So I have a couple ways of managing that so I can control how the learner moves through that content. So one scenario that comes up is I don't want students to see or access the entire course just yet. So I want to go to, let's say we just started it yesterday. I want to go to Unit 2 and I want to make that invisible or inaccessible for a student, right? So where am I again? I'm in my class or I'm in the curriculum using that magnifying glass from the course catalog page, and I'm in the class curriculum section. Okay, so it brings you here first to the summary, right? And we modified with the learners, okay, and I took some out. And the class curriculum is where we're kind of tweaking what's going on within the course. So scenario, I don't want my learners to see or access that. So hide is invisible, lock is that I can't open it. So I'm going to just pretend we're going to lock it, and I'm going to make Unit 3 invisible, right? and unit 4, I want to lock it. I mean, whatever way you want to do this. If I added back those 2 new students, this would be the status for them. If you, had mobility within your class and you're like, oh, well, do I have to go back and lock it for some or hide it for others? No, you don't have to do that. This is the rule for anybody who's enrolled in this class. You can always rectify the situation. No, I didn't mean to hide this or block it or do any kind of changes there, and I don't want to have any of these things stick for the actual class. But the other key thing is anything that you change, you have to save or else it won't stick. So if you do a lot of hiding and locking, then and you don't hit save, then it will not be saved. The other piece that you can do is you can actually even open up any of the units, and you could decide that, no, I want to really hide this or lock this particular activity because I'm going to use it, I'm going to teach from it. I'm going to present with that, so I don't want them to see it or use it yet. And so you kind of want to limit their access. So you can always open up the units and modify what's included in terms of visibility or in order. So another thing instructors always ask me is, well, I'm going to cover perimeter before I cover, or compound shapes before I cover area. Well, I that's not how it is in PLATO. I'm confused, or how do I modify this so it makes sense? So I can move the content up and down depending on what exactly that the place that I wanted to put it. It does not change what was the original. It just says, well, this is going to show up earlier for your students. So you just click the thing and move up or down depending on where that piece should be placed. Okay, so you can lock something, they see it, but they can't get into it. If I hide it, they don't even see that it's there, or I can move it up and down. So those are all things, but I do have to choose the layer first, right? So I want to lock unit 2 or hide unit 2, I have to make sure that's selected. Same thing if I want to lock or hide unit 3, that's selected. But you do have some kind of quick things over here on the right if you wanted to do, let's say, very common one is like hide all the pretest. I don't really want to use that, so I really want that quickly to be invisible. Or I want to hide all the post tests. I really want that to be invisible all at once. So all of these things are in that curriculum. That curriculum is not changed from the original, but it's modified so that it works better with the workflow that you're presenting to your learners, and especially if they are getting overwhelmed, they're seeing too much, or deciding to present things in a slightly different order, that it's sort of in keeping with that. There's one more area here that I would draw your attention to, is the limit attempts to unlock mastery tests. This is something that I've always found to be very important to keeping students using the system in a very relevant way. It's not a video game. It's not something where having lots of lives is really going to, or lots of attempts is really going to help the learner, because they kind of spin their wheels and cannot really get the maximum benefit. So when I utilize the solution in my class, I wanted to keep them reaching out to me when they had a stumbling block. And so instead of being able to go to any of these activities, and I'll just kind of explain the scenario for those of you that are a little bit newer to how, what a mastery test is and what does this all mean, is that for each of these particular activities, there is an assessment. And that assessment has a threshold of 80% that says, yes, I made the goal, or less than 80%, no, I did not make the goal. And if I get less than 80%, that particular activity locks, right? So I can't go back into it. In order to go back into and to try it again, I have to either repeat or finish the tutorial. So it kind of forces me to remediate that particular topic area. So I take the test, I don't meet the goal. In order for me to reset myself, I have to go complete that tutorial and the test will open. So unless I modify this, right? And you can modify by the number of times that you want that to occur. The student could do that 100 times. They could do it 40 times. They could do it 20 times. And by the way, I've seen them do it, right? It's a way of kind of spinning their wheels. Yes, I'm spending time, but I'm not really moving forward. So by limiting the attempts, and I'm not saying you have to make it one, this is your call, this is your, reflection on what you see your students doing. I usually kind of stuck to about 2 or 3, depending on the students that I was working with. Every time that they take the test, they would be able to go to the tutorial and they would be able to unlock it. So if I chose 2, it's unlocked to begin with so that they could take it and fail and unlock it. They could take it and fail it and unlock it, and that would be it. After that point, you would have to intercede and reset the test, and that's part of your Sensei dashboard under alerts. You'll see the activity and you'll see a lock. So you can always override the situation if they have bypassed it. But what's really critical for me was that I saw that they were struggling with that area multiple times, and I didn't want them to continue that path. I wanted them to have to tell me that they were to reset it, and we would have a conversation. Why you want me to reset it? Have you spent time in the tutorial? Let's talk about what you were struggling with before they're going on and on. So it's really important to be aware of this feature. It's up to you whether or not you want to use it, but it is something I would recommend paying attention to, especially if students are doing a lot of work independently. Okay, so it's another way of modifying and controlling the landscape for your learners so that they are reaching out when they do have challenges, or that you want to make sure that they're not just testing and testing and testing and not really getting a meaningful experience. But of course, any changes that I make, I better save them or else they're not going to stick. So if you're finding, hey, I made all these changes and they're not showing up, check and make sure you do that first. All right, so when we log in and we go to courseware, it brings us here. Depending on your site, it'll of course list that up here. We went into the course catalog, and that's where we would see everything. So if you're an instructor, you would not see the course catalog. I know most of you are probably a program administrator, so you will see all of them. Every course functions the same way, whether it's a custom course or it is an original PLATO course in terms of the buttons and the features. So when we looked earlier at a course that we had created, we're going to still have the same options here. So I just want to refresh our knowledge, right? We have one here for GED or Accuplacer or anything that we have going on. Still the same magnifying glass, right? Still the editing for the class, or the ability to, right, enroll learners, right? We have to choose the class, or maybe if we don't want to use the class anymore, we can deactivate the class. Or if I want another section, what icon again over here, right, with the plus sign that will give us, hey, I need to have another section, another cohort that's attached to that. So it's all right up for here, but again, the hint is hover over the icon and you will be able to be told what's going on. The only piece here that I think we didn't touch on is the reports. If I click on that, it'll give me the report options tied to this specific class. So if you need them, that's a good place to also look around. All right, so we have talked about setting up a class, managing a class that we already have in place, as well as enrolling learners. So those are important things to be comfortable with. But sometimes we want to browse a bit more. Well, what's in this GED course? How do I look around through the eyes of a learner? Or if I perhaps want to make some course changes or modifications. So again, back at our courses tab, we've looked at course catalog in my classes. We want to look around, we want to browse. So I'm going to click on this, and this is going to show me all of the content that I could work with that is within the scope of this particular program. So you'll see here at the top and mixed in are some what we call custom resources, right? So there are some of those in here. And I'm sure some of your colleagues are using them already. So I'm going to bypass that a little bit. And usually the first course that will be listed, and it does actually say PLATO course, so you'll know that these are the out-of-the-box courses, and the ones that do not have that listing means that they have been somehow customized or modified from the original. But the whole point of coming here is that I want to look a little bit deeper at this content. I want to see what my students may get so that I could decide maybe what things I wanted to hide or move or lock or anything like that. So all I have to do here is click on the little arrow that's next to the briefcase, and that opens up the content, right? Much like what we saw when we could modify that as for learners. And I want to look a bit more at, let's say, a pretest. What's on this pretest? What's included? How does it look? How does it feel? So I can just click on view, and that pretest is going to open up like what the learner would see. But I often get the question is, oh, but I'm seeing the answers. Does the student see the answers? No, we're seeing the answer key view. If I want to see what it looks like blank, I just click on the unanswered. Okay, so it's just defaulted because I'm going in as an instructor. I'm looking through the eyes of that role that I'm going to see there's answers already in place. But if I want to see it blank, then I also have that feature. And that will also let me jump around to the different items that are on that pretest as well. So you could say, oh, I want to see what question 14 looks like. Okay, what would be the answer to 14? So for pretest and posttest, I just click on the view. If I wanted to see more about a content piece, let's say operations with decimals, I have to go down one more layer. And just so that for those of you who may be a little bit newer, this is the most common hierarchy within PLATO courses, is going to be a unit. And then when I open up the unit, there's going to be a pretest at the beginning and a post-test at the end. So this is looking at just the content that's part of this. By the way, that pretest is exemptive. It looks at what is the knowledge already within that unit, and what areas the student may have prior knowledge. Still that 80% mastery. So if I get 80% on any of these topics in the pretest, then those will be things that are flagged as proficient and mastered already. So just so you have a sense of what structure is here. For a particular activity that I want to preview, and we talked about mastery tests a little bit earlier, I can click on the tutorial and say, oh, let's look at this. And I click on view, and it's going to pull up the tutorial like with the learner would see. So one of the things that is really critical about Browse Curriculum, other than I want to see what the learner sees, is that it also expands your opportunities for teacher-led lessons. So I used to use these a lot because there would be examples or scenarios or visuals that really helped me expand what I would present on without me having to write it all out on whiteboard or create my own PowerPoint, to equally have access to these materials as an instructor to show. And Browse Curriculum would be your vehicle to pull something up to show the group to use as an instructional tool as part of your lessons in your presentation or to review, right? So you can browse, you can use it to present with whatever form or shape you like. And you also will have access to all the other materials or tools that a student typically would have, such as Translate or the calculator, the highlighter, all those features. So for those of you that are working with learners who haven't really seen PLATO before, another tip with using the Browse Curriculum is actually using it to help orient your students to what's going on the page. So, may premise it with, hey, when you log in, this is the kind of thing you're going to see. I want you to this kind of order. I want to show you these particular pieces so that they're not logging in. They're like, well, I don't know what these things on the left do. And so I always kind of gave them some guidance. It's okay, you're going to have these reading tools and this is how it could help you because you've been able to practice with it. So those are all accessible to you from the Browse Curriculum. The same thing with the Mastery tabs. These could be a review that you do with your class. There's lots of ways that a mastery test can be used as whole group, or you just want to see what kinds of questions that they are going to get. Again, you have the answer key set up. You can leave it as unanswered and say, hey, what do you guys think the answer is here? Here's our choices. So it can be a more interactive option as well. But Browse Curriculum gives you visibility to see really any of the content that you may offer to your students, whether that be as a full course or really maybe even to just investigate some other areas of the content that you think could be helpful. So the next session that we have is a little bit more on the career courses, but if you're the same method applies. Hey, what's in here? How does it work? Click on it, it'll expand. Follow the same routine, right click and expand. Those are all going to be part of that Browse curriculum phase. Okay, I'm going to go back to the top here. Right, so we're still in that courses realm, right? All I did was go to the courseware area, go to courses, and we went to these three areas. I want you to be aware about Custom Course Builder, but I'm not going to go into that today because it's a little bit more advanced feature and you don't really need to use that from day one. And this is a beginning PLATO as the focus. But Custom Course Builder lets you look at that entire library of content that we've been browsing and working with, and to actually make your own variation from that library. So something to put aside as, hey, this is your next step. But I think it offers a lot of opportunity when you're ready to move to this newer piece to say, hey, I really want to change how this course is structured. I really just want Unit 1 offered and Unit 4. This tool lets you have that design behind the courses, whereas earlier when we were looking at hiding and locking and moving, just kind of tweaks it slightly. This is really a redesign within that curriculum of the structure. So save this for later, just wanted to give you a spark. There's something you may want to learn more about when you're ready to delve deeper. Okay, so that's the last piece within the Custom Course Builder. Okay. Great, so one last area that I want to touch on today, because we have, obviously there's a lot within the courses, is question comes up very frequently. Okay, my student has this course, but this course doesn't contain X, and they need to have this particular activity because they're struggling with this concept, right? So we were at, let's say, the GED math, and they're really having problems with adding fractions with unlike denominators, or something very specific that I want to augment the course with. Or if they happen to be using the assessments, it's not in their prescription. I want to augment what they've been given. That's where Flex Assignments is coming in. So courses are really going to be your larger, really more scaffolded learning path, right? I'm going to do this, then this, and this, and these things are building on each other. I have a diagnostic, the prescriptive, exemptive assessment at the beginning. With Flex Assignments, really lets me pinpoint something very specific and very targeted, but it's definitely something that would be parts and pieces that I would use to support a learner who may need additional assistance, or learner or learners. So while we may see with a Flex Assignment the same learners, right, that we would be encountering with our courses, and the same courses or content, right, here's the same one, it also is going to let us be a bit more specific. So just say, for example, that I wanted to add in something a little more basic, like I mentioned. So I'm going to do that, dividing fractions, right? I just want that one little piece that doesn't currently exist in my course that some students are struggling with. That's where Flex Assignments is going to best serve you. The important piece here is, yes, you can include pre and post tests, but it doesn't let you have that unit structure that we saw with the courses. So, the GED course, we had unit 1, 2, 3, and 4, and a course test. Flex Assignments let you pull over whatever content that you'd like. However, they are not going to have that infrastructure, and they're also not able to be shared with others. So if I make a fancy flex assignment that has all these things, it's not a permanent solution. It's really temporary to this particular group of learners. If I make a custom resource for the courses that I'm working with, that's a way of preserving and sharing that out with others. So all of these things are off of your main dashboard. I'm just going to hop back over. So when you log in, you'll be most likely at your Sensei dashboard. The alerts was what I was speaking about before, where you would see the little lock to tell you, hey, ding, ding, there's a student who is locked on a test. But you're either going to go to courseware and to your particular location, which should be the one that is assigned to you, to see all of your different courses. And flex assignments is sort of our additional pieces that you may need. All of these things have the show me embedded throughout. And all you have to do is click on that. May have additional pieces as well as video health and the support site. All right, I hope I left enough time for questions if there are questions.
Yes, you actually did. You did leave plenty of time for questions.
Okay.
I actually only had one question, and I was able to work on that on the account side. It was more of a personal accounting issue, or account access issue. So there are no other questions. So Leslie, thank you so much for providing that session. Thank you to everyone for attending the session. Again, I will remind you that this session will also be archived on our website, which is www.nmdelt.org, to watch afterward if you so choose to. And thank you very much, and we'll hope to see you in the next session.